food supply is about to run out. The only reason we survived was due to our faction leader sacrificing himself. Such a heroic action will never be forgotten. Too bad we actually ended up losing the city right away in the middle of our conversion process. Another faction known as Counterattack swooped in, besieged and then also occupied the city. So I took it. We just butchered 2 armies, but 3 more were about to take their place. So now the Counterattack armies were able to lay siege to Bactria. Our second army has been destroyed. Only the general and a few archers made it inside the city. But it took the hostiles 20 minutes to do so. We just needed to hold out for the same amount of time to survive. Our men were dying like flies, but that statement goes both ways. The Counterattack commander foolishly decided all his forces should push through one single tower, meaning all we had to do was hold this exact choke point. One by one we made their men rout, edging us ever closer to victory. They kept swarming over the walls, but the men held their ground. Our own generals never actually saw combat. They just sat atop the Acropolis watching his men save the day. It was a heroic victory. We even killed one of the hostile commanders. But this just felt like delaying the inevitable. Area, the city we had spilled so much blood for, fell too. We were pushed back to just 2 provinces. However, this actually turned out to be in our favor. After so much intense conflict, Area had run out of supplies. So now the city was a liability for Counterattack and was actually harming 4 hostile armies. This was exactly what we needed to survive. Our own weakened armies, which we allowed to abandon the south, couldn't actually reinforce Bactria as they were trapped behind a Mauryan army. They tried to take out our armies then and there, as we couldn't escape, but apparently we had nothing to worry about. The men at our command exceeded all expectations and scored a heroic victory. After the battle, we teamed up with the army from Bactria to clean up the province. Besides, the attacking Counterattack armies were retreating. Is this where it all turns around for us? Well, not exactly. We failed to make peace with the behemoth of a superpower to the west of us. And the Mauryans were still on the offense. By now, we had an army in the south to deal with that issue. Okay, so regarding the other Counterattack armies, I had regained quite a lot of confidence after actually surviving this siege from earlier. So as I realized how weakened their armies were after the attrition from Area, my thoughts were like, surely we can defeat them now. So after having mustered a few more men, I led a massive attack, but I had actually tunnel visioned myself as I forgot how weak our troops actually were. The entire left flank broke after a single cavalry charge. We really need better armies than this. After the failed attack, they captured and killed one of my best officers. A tragedy for sure, if not for the fact that we were able to finish off one Counterattack army due to them being too far away from each other. The second army fled south in vain, where our local garrison took care of them. In the meantime, we kept mass producing levies for our armies. In case you haven't guessed it, our strategy was basically throw bodies at them. I mean, it has worked so far, kinda. A third Mauryan army attacked after this, but once again we handled the situation. Wait, our land's actually free from hostiles. Okay, now it is time to celebrate. Immediately after this, we lunged forward, grabbing back Area and Marguerite. No chance we will let go of them now. We even went as far as Soucia. The town was liberated, of course, as we had no chance of ever holding it for more than 2 turns. A settlement we did occupy though was Amul. Persians had previously stolen it from our nomad allies. So as it was unguarded right now, due to us forcing Counterattack back into Persia, it was an obvious choice to take it. The entire province was now ours. However, this short trip to the north meant the farming settlement Magiane was less fortified than intended. Luckily for us, they came at our defenses in waves. This made our job so much easier as our men could easily carve them down. We also sent an army south to handle the threat from that front. It did look kinda scary with the Mauryan army so close, but the terrain of the province actually kept us safe, meaning we could just besiege the town. Not wanting this grave situation from the beginning of this video to befall us again, I placed spies on the most direct routes into our territory. This way we would know if they moved against us again. The following turn we liberated our southern border, reinstating our fallen affiliates. From this we discovered an additional 2 sets of Mauryan armies counterattacking our location. So as our armies were too weak and as the rebellion was raiding Area, we returned back north again. By the way, can someone please explain to me why on earth the Seleucids are at war with us? Basically every faction known to us in the west hates us. We also received the news of the Counterattack scholars and generals reforming their armies. So that was great. Actually it was. For some blessed reason this allowed us to muster Indo-Hellenic units from our frontier. If you don't understand why this is great, let me explain it to you. We are fighting countless armies, meaning we needed fully replenished armies to have a chance of winning, but that requires the right type of population, which we only can get from our home provinces. So beforehand our armies always had to return home to replenish, just to then make their way back out to the front lines. A tremendous task. Worst of all, this allowed our enemies to muster new armies to beat us with. A constant drain of our manpower, until now. These Indo-Hellenic units are from the foreigner population, which can be found in every single region in the world. So now, with these units, we actually don't have to go home after every single attack. You see? Now we have a chance of defeating them, albeit being a small one. But we still needed to get enough of them, which turned out to be a challenge as several armies were coming for us. So why not just slow them down, right? It might not have been possible in the south, but Nicaea was right for the taking. Our first real attack into Persia. By the way, just take a quick look and enjoy how powerful this new army looks. Now that is an army with the potential of glorious deeds. The Counterattack attack on our capital in the beginning actually inspired me. Instead of focusing down one part of a wall, we will have equipment that can give us multiple access points. The first time we made use of this new weaponry was actually against the Mauryan fortification. Our artillery battalions absolutely obliterated their forces, who tried to rush out through one exit. And the ones who actually made it out felt the charge for our new Indo-Hellenic warriors. It was a slaughter. After that victory, we finished off the leftovers to then liberate the town again. We actually did the exact same thing for Counterattack. It came at the expense of our entire fighting force. But look at this, it is replenishing on the front lines. The only real difference between the two towns was that the southern one was immediately lost. Again. You know what? That town is probably useless by now. I have no count on how many times it switched sides. But eventually, I promise you, it ended up under our influence. After realizing the Mauryan armies were mostly scattered within our own territory, I decided to take the battle to them, just to find a random Counterattack army there. We defeated them with a decisive victory and followed it up with us conquering Kamana, along with its great wonder, which I definitely can't pronounce. After that, the idea was to go for Hermosea, but as it was heavily fortified, we moved on to Persepolis. A bad idea as this just started a chase after our strongest army. It had already suffered heavy casualties and was now also suffering from attrition. Truly terrible. Our gains were lost right after our departure. But look at this! While that army was campaigning in Moria, our other armies had cleaned up our own territory. Those victorious armies were now marching for a strategically important city in the middle of Persia. And it just so happens that this was directly in line with the escape route by our fleeing army. Once they had linked up, they decided to strike. We threw everything we could at their walls, creating 3 breaches for our men to attack. Although we had no luck with 2 of the gaps, the third one granted us access to their courtyard, where we then, after a prolonged period of time, outflanked their men, scoring us a costly victory. We lost half of all our forces. Devastating. But the city was razed. Our faction leader, he returned home to gather more troops for our future plans. But he didn't get to stay there for more than a turn, as the Atropatkan armies were already counterattacking. We defeated the first wave, but had no chance against the second assault. We lost everything here. The faction leader, the heir to the kingdom, and all 3 armies. Only a few skirmishers made it out. Both Satracata and Susia fell while we were licking our wounds back home. This was absolutely devastating for us. Or not quite. I wasn't foolish enough to commit all our armies to attack the Persians. As a matter of fact, I had also planned a second invasion of Moria. Here they managed to liberate Ashvakas and even push for Pura. Combine this with the fact that we had just defeated another Morian army in the north. That specific war looked quite promising. We still had to be careful not to be caught off guard though. Mysteriously, after an assault on Susia, we actually couldn't liberate the town. My best guess was that it wasn't possible due to the remnants still scavenging the land. Our plan to attack Pura was halted after discovering the Morians had reinforced the city. We managed to defeat them after they sallied out, but the following attrition gave us no choice but to end our campaign in the south early. The losses we suffered were quite severe. Once again, due to the Indo-Hellenic units, we were quick to raise another army. Nevertheless, after a long time, where we have played defensive, we marched out again. This time I had a new plan. We were gonna march all the way into the heart of Persia, demolish their economic provinces, destroy their crops, and overall just give us an edge. Basically, we ended up liberating 3 different settlements and eventually laying siege to their capital. It was a very risky move as we had no idea whether they had reinforcements sneaking up on us. We played it safe though, no chance we would lose that many men in a single siege again. As we had lost a lot of men by this point, we slowly made our way back where 2 of our armies had to fight against over 12,000 men. Basically, we used our cavalry to encourage the enemies into attacking our center, where we had actual pikemen. So this overall meant we eventually trapped all their forces in a box. But the thing is, everywhere else where we didn't have any pikes, our men were overrun. It was a valiant defeat, but so be it. Losing men weren't really that big of an issue for us anymore. Bactria had become a well-oiled war machine, especially after I decided to construct a new muster field in Marakandra, which is all the way back home. Basically, for the rest of the war, this single general was tasked to raise pikemen from Bukhara and bring them to the front line. At the same time, we used the city that started this war, Araya, to muster yet another army, with even more impressive cavalry. Now this is where things get a bit weird. Apparently, due to our expedition deep into the Atropatkan heartland earlier, they had recalled all their armies to solve that issue. This basically allowed Satracata, which is one of the nations we liberated, to expand. Eager to seize the moment, we marched out, overwhelming an entire Persian army and continued to free the land from Atropatkan influence. These attacks took a heavy toll on our manpower, so basically we had to split up our forces, with most of our generals returning home to replenish, while the third army attempted to get back into the heartland of the Persian kingdom once again. On their travels, we met what probably can be considered the worst general in the world. Basically, our army hid in a forest just slightly north of the Persians. So as the Persian general thought we had retreated, they chose to pursue us, not knowing they were in reality chasing nothing. Ha! It is time to raise the lands. Wait, is that Mastodon?